So with Mahler, I'm sure the argument is coming that, well, you're just doing what he does, right, in terms of clickbait. You're just concentrating on him, and you're hating on him, and you're trying to build your name from just attacking him. I would remind people to go to Mahler's actual videos where he has this whole long series attacking H. Bomberman. I would also remind people that he uses the name Harris in his videos. So people say, you can't use his name. Mahler uses people's names. He does. I'll clip it in a video that I'm going to make real soon. I'll present it to you. You listen to it. You tell me, is that his voice? Am I disturbing the audio? So please at least stop with inaccurately labeling me. Oh, and on a final note, the Ripley people who have criticized him, they're having their private information shared. You know what Mahler is doing about this? Absolutely nothing. He doesn't care. There you go. But we're not going to concentrate on the man-cow god. Now we're going to look at some supposedly real critics. So to give a good sample of the Snyder critics, let's take on a real critic. And these two people who work for the AV Club, again, this is not in my financial self-interest because they hire people like me, but they're going to inaccurately attack Zack over the infamous fish scene between Batman and Aquaman, where he tries to recruit him, but Aquaman says, nah, I'm fine. And they're going to try to pull some ridiculous arguments out of nowhere and completely contradict themselves.
That they can kind of put in there, and you can hear
punch up,
sometimes.
I believe is the term.
Punch up, you're right. Yeah, that's exactly the word I'm looking for. Punch up. Whedon does a lot of punching up because that scene, that particular scene that I'm talking about, there's like a couple jokes in there that were never supposed to be there. Yeah. So you watch it and you realize that it more or less plays the same in terms of plot, but the jokes are gone and the tone is a little different, and that is the whole movie, I think, in some respects.
I agree. I mean, let's the thing that I wanted to bring up, I'm glad you mentioned that scene. Let's talk about how that scene ends as opposed to the original version of Justice League, which, not only is Joss Whedon adding these jokes, these little, quick beats here and there to lighten the tone, but also, when you see the version as it is now in the Snyder cut, when it ends fairly quickly in Whedon's version. In this version, at the end of it, these women from this small isolated fishing village begin this portentous hymn that is presumably in honor of the mighty Aquaman, and it goes on for several minutes.
It's like Midsummer or something. It turns into Midsummer briefly.
It's confounding. Yeah.
I would another point about that scene, because so they walk outside and basically Aquaman goes into the water, and you're right, the scene ends with these women singing a hymn as he goes away. Before that, however, there's even a moment where Aquaman says the strongest man is strongest alone. And in the Whedon cut, Bruce Wayne quips back at him, that's not a saying, that's the opposite of the saying.
Yeah.
Which I think is true, in fact. Mm-hmm. I think it is the opposite of the saying. Yep. But in the Snyder cut, there's no commentary on that at all. So it almost feels like there were times when Whedon basically was almost making fun of the movie that he was hired to rewrite and reshoot.
Yeah, and that I agree with that. Like, one of the things that I think is interesting about this movie, I have a hard time imagining anybody who's going to watch this, aside from maybe kids who were still too young when the first Justice League came out. Mm-hmm. I feel like most people who are going to watch this are people who watched Whedon's version of Justice League and are curious to see this version, right? Whether they're people who were behind the release of the Snyder cut or not. I think it's going to be comic book movie fans who are like, oh, there's a new version of this movie that I've already seen once, but now it's got 4 hours and less jokes. What does that look like? And it looks sort of like what you might imagine it would look like. It's a much longer, more drawn out version of the thing you already saw.
Yeah, it's bizarre and fascinating maybe more in the abstract than in actually sitting through the whole thing, to be honest. Mm-hmm. But it is.
I'm actually being very nice because in an earlier part of their discussion, they keep going on and on about how Joss really didn't change all that much. And this is basically the same film that we got in 2017. So what's the big deal? And here they're saying, this thing's like Midsummer. Now, I would really defy anybody to go back to the reviews of Justice League 2017 and try to find anyone who described Justice League like Midsummer. And then they say, yeah, we didn't, he just added a whole lot of comedy scenes. If you do that, you're going to change what the thing is. And they even say it red-handedly, saying, it seems like Joss doesn't even like this film. He's making fun of it. Now, why in the world would Zack himself make a film making fun of himself? Why would he do that? Clearly, he wouldn't do that in his version. It's clearly not the same thing, and it's pretty shockingly obvious because one is 2 hours, the other one is 4 hours. You've got 2 hours of footage. How could it be the same film? And even people who'd even like Zack Snyder, people who are extremely hostile, agree Cyborg gets a really fleshed out story. Flash, really fleshed out. Just a bit of trimming that they did. That's going to change a film. If you can radically change the context of a film, cutting out even a couple of scenes, if you cut out 2 hours, that's going to change the film. So I'm really shocked by what they're even trying to argue. It's just like, it's the same stupid Zack Snyder stuff. I don't understand why people are getting so excited. All these Snyder Cut people, what are they talking about? But now let's deal with the substance of what they're trying to say. Oh, there's all this pretentious singing by these fish women. Right. Zack's version is way more serious. It's trying to take the epic nature of the heroes seriously. The Joss Whedon version doesn't care about these things. It's sort of just mocking the whole thing. It's not even even at the most basic level. The plots aren't even the same at all. Steppenwolf is destroyed by the parademons because he feels fear and the parademons start attacking him. And the Snyder version, the Justice League kills Steppenwolf. And brutally does it, too, by the way, right? Like Wonder Woman does this slash attack. Are you even paying attention to the film? It just seems they came in with such strong biases that, oh, it's him again. He's back. I don't understand it. It's like, maybe it's a little bit better, but really it's all just garbage to me. And it's like, now what I really don't like is that Dowd. This is what I find really astonishing about the Midsummer comment. He did one of the pull quotes for Hereditary. If you go back, he was one of the critics that they cited all the time in the PR stuff. Now, if he thinks that Ari is a genius and the next Kubrick, that's fine. That's great. I think Hereditary's overblown, stupid, pretentious, boring. I didn't think he did a good job. But at least I tried to take seriously what he was up to. I even tried to do some research before I attack somebody or critique somebody. So with Ari, he says, well, listen, to me, it was a family drama within the shape of a horror film. And I'm like, okay, well, I didn't find the family very engaging either, so I didn't really care except for Gabriel Byrne. I thought it was all pretty silly. But at least I tried to take seriously what he was up to. Here it just seems like they're just laughing at Snyder and just saying, well, real critics know Zack Snyder's a fraud. Now, my criticism with Mauler is that he doesn't really know film at all, so he's just making a lot of moronic, ignorant comments. I can't say that about Dowd or this other commentator. They seem to know film and film history. They just don't like Zack Snyder, and this is very common among elite critics. They really hate him. I mean, Scott Mendelson, you go through the list. People at breakfast all day. This is not a small group. A lot of influential critics just hate Zack Snyder, and they're perfectly free to hate Zack Snyder. I have no issue with them hating Zack Snyder as long as they try to accurately gauge the film and give it a chance and give it an honest appraisal. And here again, it's just the same old stuff. It's just like, oh, it's the Dark Murder Man. Ugh, and he doesn't have any sense of humor, even though this version of Justice League is filled with jokes. Kind of disappointing, but there just seems to be this collective prejudice against Snyder. It's from ignorant critics like Kaloum, and that's his name. His name is Kaloum. If you don't like his name, talk to his parents. And then people like Dowd, who's like, you know who the real cinema person is? It's Ari. It's Midsummer. It's not this pseudo Midsummer. Okay, is that what Joss Whedon gave us? Pseudo Midsummer? Did he? Did he? So even at the basic level, the criticism is just bizarre. And you know, the funny thing is, I actually agree with part of it, that I did think he went overboard with the fish scene. I did think the yodeling was a lot. The yodeling goes on for quite a while, but I think did it precisely for this reason, that he had to go so overboard and just be so different from the Joss Whedon version that no one with a brain could possibly say this yodeling would make sense in the Joss Whedon version. And it doesn't. It's totally different in tone, totally different context. You can see why Joss cut it completely, but you can see why Snyder wanted to include it. But even after doing all these attempts to make sure, there is no possible way you can mistake the two. In fact, I'm really stunned that they clearly didn't even do any basic research. Apparently, do they think the Wonder Woman scene with Flash, where Flash is on her breasts, do they really think this is from the same film? No, Joss didn't just cut things, and he just didn't add comedy things. He changed the film. You may like that film, you may defend that film, but it's not the same film. And to try to revise history that this is basically the same thing is really, even if you don't care about Snyder, is just, that's not true. It's just at a basic level, it's just not empirically correct. You'd have to provide a ton of evidence to make that case, and they don't even bother. They're just like, it's Snyder again. And it's like, okay, are you going to try to be accurate? Nah, we don't have to be. He's Snyder. We can lie about Snyder. He's like Michael Bay. He's a fraud. He's an idiot. We can just lie about him and nobody's going to catch us. Nobody's going to care. It's like, okay. And I get it. Listen, I mean, this thing is not getting a lot of views. It's not like the Mauler video, which gets hundreds of thousands of views. So I'm not getting anything out of this. I mean, who really knows about these people? But this is the common attitude among the, quote, good critics is it's Zack Snyder. Now it's time to lie. And now it's time to say the most stupid, crazy stuff and get away with it. It's like, okay, all right, I guess. But I don't think he was up to doing Midsummer. He's doing his own things. If you love Ari, that's fine. Watch those films. This is this film. Please criticize this film fairly. Yeah, could you try that for one moment? Could you just try that for 1 minute? Just once? Just try to give it a chance? I don't know. Just try. All right, there's been Pop Cult Analyzed on the Snyder hatred among elite critics.